Next up in this week's tour, Master Pro A is, oh sorry Nicholas, I'm busy at the moment. We've got Sequoia out from the 6th tee. You can see I've already put a 14 under round, which is ranking me second at the moment. Already second in rank in round 1 as well. So not looking particularly good for a start to the week. Can sometimes pull that back in rounds 3 and 4. As I've said before, they're heavily ranked more towards points. Anyhow, so this course, it's very similar actually, other than obviously the distance involved to other tees. There's no great surprises there are on some other holes when you get back to 6th tee. Suddenly there's a tree in the way or something. So this one's a fade. With the right to left, it can be really tricky. With the left to right that we've got here, not too bad. I'm just having a few second thoughts there. You'll see me do that quite a lot. I'm kind of, as I'm playing it, I get flashbacks of times I've played similar shots before and where it went wrong. Sometimes you adjust and you think you should have left it where it was. Other times it was a correct adjustment. Let's see what we get this time. Again, taking a while to catch this right on the line. It's you can't really do this in games with a timer, especially things like the 1-to-1 tournament, which I may do a video on actually at some point. You have to play your shots within 30 seconds or something. But with this one, it's a little bit too hard, but not too bad. It's not left too tricky a putt. With the pin at the back, that's a lot easier. With the pin where it is there, it is quite tricky to get it bang on because he's essentially wanting to bounce it round about where the bunker is. So you've got to think about avoiding that as well. So I could have played it slightly shorter, but it's not left too tricky a putt, as you can see. There are some tricky greens at Sequoia, but a lot of the time they kind of break it two ways, which when you're using a guide is actually a lot easier. If you've got a double breaking putt, it is a lot easier sometimes than a heavy gradient, because when you come to hit it on the line, if you don't get it bang on, obviously it's going to, if you hit it too soft, it's going to take more break, but it's going to take more break from both sides, if that makes any sense. So despite the fact you haven't got it bang on the line, it's still got a chance of going in. You always want to try and catch it on the line if you can, but you do get a little bit more room for error when it's a double breaking putt. So the par 3 here is fairly straightforward. I think with my stats it's generally a backspin. This can be a really tricky hole from the lower tees when you've got a load of stats, because it can be quite tricky to get over that tree that you saw going right across the fairway. A pitch shot will travel lower than you'd want, and it can be a real job getting it over. So you've got to think about getting it over and then also stopping it in time. From slightly higher tees, it's a fairly regulation pitch, but from the 6th tee for me, a backspin. And so when we're saying it's a fairly regulation shot, I've actually gone off there. Now the fact that, I can remember, I can tell you ahead of time, this chip's going to go in. With a chip such as this, there's obviously quite a lot of slope right to left, but it's very close. So although it's going to move to the left a bit, as long as I get the distance right, which is a bit harder than that, I think I want to hit it. Obviously, the harder you hit it, the less break's going to be involved, but then you've got to take into account that you're hitting it too hard to actually get it in the hole. Chips of around this distance are always going to be quite close, and this one went in. So a mistake on the second hole, but I got away with it. So the key at Sequoia, I think, is the first 2 par 4s. So we've done the first one, got an eagle on it, and this is the second one. There's a very small target to aim for. You've got to be pitching it basically just past that first bunker you can see poking out from behind the tree. And too hard, it's going to, obviously, anything, if it clips the fringe, you've got a chance it'll stop before the other end of the green. But if it misses the fringe, it's going to roll off every time, especially with that wind behind it. It's very difficult to control this. So my aim is to avoid the bunker and hit the rough, which I have done, but literally a couple of inches to the right, and that actually would have been pretty good. It's very small margins. So this, very similar to the last green, the last hole. The only problem I've got here is it's coming out of the rough, which gives me another thing to think about, which is getting the distance right. As you'll have seen before, chipping out of the rough. If you play a rough shot, this would have very little chance of going in because it just flies out. Playing a chip shot means you have to hit it a bit harder, but you do get a lot more control over it. Again, from memory, I think this is one of the mistakes I make on this round. Again, spoiling the suspense. I'm sure you're all sitting there biting your fingernails. I hit that roughly how I wanted, and it didn't come in as much as I wanted. So actually not too bad. I got the distance bang on. I just overcompensated a little bit for the break of the green and also the lie of the ball. Very little. It's going to move from 5 yards. It is going to move to the left a little, but I overcompensated there. So this par 5, you'll see in the World Championship, you'll see 9 out of 10 players albatross it pretty much every time. A little bit more complicated from the 6th tee, especially if there's a left to right wind, because you can't play a straight shot. You've got to draw it, and then that brings the bunker in front of the green much more into the equation. I've struck lucky here and got a dead straight wind, so it's just a case of getting the distance right. As long as you hit the fairway in front of the green, it's pretty much always going to stop on the green. So I think my thinking here is going to be, you don't want to leave it. It's possible to leave it short. If you go in for, rolling it right up to the pin, I would have played it a bit shorter than I played it here. But my thinking really was, right, I want to just make sure it bounces in front of the green, and it's going to give me an albatross putt. I hit that one bang on the line, so I'm obviously having second thoughts. I thought, right, I'm going to hit this a bit harder just in case. And I definitely didn't need that. If I'd hit it exactly as I lined it up, that would have been much closer to the pin, probably with a nice approach. But again, I've erred on the side of caution. I was a little bit worried, obviously, it was going to get caught up at the front with that 3-yard headwind. So rather than that, I thought, well, I'll hit it a bit harder, and I ended up on the green. So I got exactly what I intended to do. Could have been a bit better. So you get 2 par 5s in back-to-back in quick succession. Actually, on both the Sequoia courses, the 4th and the 5th are both par 5s. This one is... I've got stats here from any tee to almost... In fact, I think it's possible to drive the green from the first tee. But obviously, even big risk. It's an island in the middle of there, and you've got to get it bang on. I could drive this way past the tree, but you'll notice I'm going for a full forward. You'll see why in a moment. So a forward, you'll see where it lands. There's a bit of an incline, and it'll stop very quickly. Roughly where that shadow is, that gives me my best line into the green. So you can see there, I'm not too far on that tree comes into the equation. And I've got a fairly regulation backspin shot into the hole. Obviously, consideration is going to be if I hit it too hard here, as I did on the second hole, the par 3, it's probably going to go in the water. So you'll see me just err on the side of caution a bit and leave it this side of the hole. There was a little bit of a break left to right, or an incline left to right on the ball. So the elevation of the ball meant it was always going to start off over to the right, and the wind pushed it that way a little bit. But straightforward enough eagle. You can get in all sorts of trouble if you end up in the rough from your drive, trying to approach out of the rough. You can end up in the water. So it's always best just to err on the side of caution, leave yourself a longish, safe approach. This one is eagleable, if that's a word. I can eagle it, and this is one where I'll play basically an underpowered driver rather than, you can see there, if I play a power shot, I could get a 3-wood on here with a lot of loft. The problem with that is the green's going to slope away from us, so even if I land a 3-wood bang on the green, it's going to, like right at the front, it's still probably going to roll off the back. The way I hit it here, I've taken a driver, spent a bit of time on the practice field, and I know that if I get my percentage around about 94, I think, it will bounce in front of the green, take the pace off it, and go onto the green. The beauty of using an underpowered club is it's not as highly affected by the wind. I mean, a driver especially is going to travel quite low. Lower the shot is, the less wind's going to take it. But even crosswinds, they'll still be affected by the wind, but it'll be less so. With if you're hitting the same distance with a 3-wood power shot as opposed to an underpowered driver, the wind will be significantly less the effect on it. So you see I made a bit of a last minute adjustment there to the line, thinking all sorts of things as I'm playing the shot, but we should see, that landed pretty much where I wanted it to, and not left myself too far away for an eagle. So far 1 shot dropped. A perfect round here is 17 under, which you will see from time to time. In fact, we'll probably see one this week, albeit not from me. So there we go. Again, you'll not have a lot of you not have the stats to make the green, especially from the 6th tee. But a lot of the principles I'm applying on the 6th tee here will apply to the other tees as well. So hit the practice fields armed with the knowledge that you gain, and you can pick up a few shots. Sequoia is actually, if you get the right winds, not too tricky a course. This one, where the pin is quite tricky, and I think you'll see the result of that shortly. You can play all sorts of shots. You can play a high shot, you can play a draw, a high draw, sorry. What I tend to do is just play a normal shot. The green's slightly higher than us, so it's quite easy to hit the fairway just in front of the green, as you'll see in a lot of holes. It takes the pace off it, and then it's just about how hard you've hit it, how far it's going to roll on. You do get a little bit of protection as the ball runs away from you past the pin. You'll see it'll stop quite heavily. I think that's what happens here. Yeah, so it looks like it's going off, and there's a bit of a hill it has to go up, which is great, but what it means is you now got to put down a hill, and this is the sort of putt I've talked about before where it gets really tricky. There's not a huge break on it. If this was uphill, you'd be going just a couple of notches to the right. Because it's downhill, the guide's making us hit it much softer. I've got the line up pretty right, actually pretty good. But even with that, unless I get this fairly spot on, you've got a bit of breathing space with a 7-foot downhill putt. Anything higher than that, if you don't get it bang on the line, that was just under, and you'll see it does go in. But if I'd not caught it, if I'd missed it by a bit more than that, that would have most likely missed. So you've really got to try, if you can, to avoid that sort of putt. Obviously not practicing what I preach there. The 8th is very similar to from the other tees. You're just going to draw it round, you're going to land it in front of the green, you're going to want to pitch it just in that little indentation in the front of the green you can see as the rough encroaches onto the green. Quite the heavy slope there, so as long as you hit that bit of rough and you're not too short and get caught up in it, you're always going to end up on the green. So you'll see, hopefully that's what I do here. Yeah, that's pretty much bang on, so that's rolling up nicely to the pin. It's quite nicely contoured in that wherever you hit it, it's going to roll on roughly the middle of the green. You can get a little bit tricky when the pin's out to the left or to the right, but you'll see a lot of eagles on this hole, especially from the lower tees in the World Championship. So on to the last. There is one way I can make the green here, and I do need a helping wind to do it. When I say one way, there may be other ways I'm not aware of, but the way that I've found fairly reliably is there's a gap between the trees, which roughly where my marker is there. If I get the distance right, I can pitch it just in front of the green before the bunker on the rough, and it'll bounce over the bunker onto the green. However, on this occasion, to be honest, I had this on the practice field pretty much down to a T, and I hit it as I was hitting it on the practice fields, and it wasn't quite right. I didn't actually practice it in this specific wind, so you'll notice I've hit it a lowish 79% there. I think a high 79% or even a low 80 would have been fine, but I'm just short. So that's the difference there between what would have been a 16 under, possibly being top at this point, and what I'll end up with, which is, unless this bunker shot goes in, a 15 under. Bunker shots, you'll notice it's plugged there, and there's actually a good video out there from a guy called Chapstick, who puts a load of bunker shots in from all sorts of angles. That's got some really good tips in, so search him up. Essentially, the elevation counts for quite a lot, because obviously you're playing a very, very lofted shot anyway with a bunker shot, and if the ball is already kind of elevated upwards a bit, it can, you can lose a bit of distance. So what I've done here is I've overdone it a bit, basically, because in previous experience I've come short, so I thought I'm going to give it a bit more here. Didn't quite make it, but unless I had a disaster, this was always going to be a birdie, whatever I did there. Quite a tricky pin position, as you can see. Where they put the pin does have a lot of say in the sort of scores you're going to get, because putting can be dead easy or dead hard depending on where the pin is. So that's that 15 under, and I think I get fairly decent points, 217. So I would have thought that'll hold up for a kind of top 5-ish, possibly even top 3, but certainly not be challenging the leaders on that round. So I'll stop for now. What I'm going to do is move on to the last 2 rounds, which are sands from the 5th tee and rolling hills from the 6th tee. I'm a little bit behind, so I need to make it up on those 2 rounds. It does often happen. I'm usually fairly good over the last couple and can often pull it back. Again, I've only ever won 2 Master Pro A tours, so don't expect me to win it, but I'll do my best. Thanks for watching.